We will start the second half here. 4. Ugly Nagaya. After Rokusuke dies, Noboru hears about Rokusuke's unfortunate past from his daughter Okuni, Akemi Negishi, and while looking at Rokusuke's face, he learns once again the dignity of a human being who silently endured misfortune, and he realizes that he felt ugly. He was ashamed. Mr. Iki no Kami is so fat that he can no longer move his body as he wants, and Redbeard is speaking to himself with anger on the way to the residence of Matsudera Iki no Kami, where he lives a wealthy life. Redbeard is talking about the power of the shogunate, which wants to reduce medical expenses to 2/3 of the current amount because the shogunate is celebrating and spending money on the celebration. Redbeard and Mori Handayu, Yoshio Sachiya, cannot stop receiving treatment. They are poor and sick. They believe that this means death, and that cutting costs is absolutely unacceptable. Do they have such a right, and if so, who made that decision? The country is at peace, the shogunate's authority is unwavering, and order is maintained. Citizens are afraid and only care about following orders. They can do anything, no matter how lawless or stupid. It can continue to openly carry the name of the shogunate. I won't be fooled. I'm an old man, but I don't turn a blind eye to this kind of approach. I'm not old-fashioned or good-natured enough to bow my head to such a mocking method. Despair must be returned with despair, and pain with pain. Redbeard said that, but no, that's not true. I can't do that. Believe that they are human. At almost the same time, Redbeard is asking himself exactly the opposite. That they didn't know what they needed to know, that they were in positions of power without the ability. Redbeard's conclusion was that the people to be pitied were the people in the shogunate, including the shogunate, who had a comfortable life and used their power to subjugate the poor. However, if the shogunate remained silent and did as the shogunate said, it would not be possible to make a living for the poor or for the nursing home, so Redbeard extorted 50 ryo as a gift of medicine from Matsudera and extorted from money changer Izumiya Tokube 30 ryo. So, Redbeard decided to use it to supplement my nursery. I have had many experiences asking myself similar questions. For example, the Liberal Democratic Party's collusion with the Unification Church, which has recently come to light. The faction of Liberal Democratic Party members' leftover income from party tickets being used as kickbacks to individual members. And the kickbacks given to people who are struggling to make ends meet due to a significant decrease in income during the coronavirus period. A nearly ineffective response. A large amount of government donations to a specific hospital where members of the subcommittee also work during the coronavirus period, and bureaucrats trying to protect former Prime Minister Abe, who was the cause of Toshio Akagi's suicide incident. The entire government is covering up the truth, illegally contributing 1.5 billion yen in campaign funds to the Minister of Justice in order to get Anri Kawai elected to the House of Councillors at all costs. And the people are living in extreme poverty due to high prices. I can point out my anger and the anger of the people over things like tax hikes. Even if you don't have a red beard, you often find yourself asking similar or opposite questions. What we can say here is that even after 250 years, the same problems still occur even though times have changed. We are still confused as to how to reform this world to make Japan a place where most people are satisfied. But reform is possible. These include Scandinavia's advanced social security policies and, in parallel, policies aimed at instilling civic awareness while raising young people's electoral awareness. However, the most important thing to do now is to change the government. And it depends on how much each citizen is aware that this opportunity is right around the corner. The fundamental difference between this era of red beards and now is that in order to avoid following foolish people, we can create the country's constitution and laws and elect people who will run the country through elections. There is no reason not to recognize this huge difference and use it for good. That is why it is easier to reform in modern times. At that time, people who opposed the shogunate were killed. Now, after hearing the news that Sahachi, Tsutomu Yamazaki, is not feeling well, Noboru comes to the tenement house. First, Noboru starts wearing a uniform instead of casual clothes. Poor patients can't call a doctor for treatment, but when they see the gray uniform, they think Noboru is a doctor and feel at ease. That's why when I see someone wearing a gray uniform walking down the street, I want to see a doctor. And if you're just trying to eat as much as you can each day, you won't be able to survive unless you at least get drunk, I said, and started talking to Noboru, saying that I had something to talk to you about. There was a woman who lent me an umbrella on a rainy day when I was soaking wet. She's a woman called Naka and she's very kind, so I started dating her. However, she has 7 younger siblings, and her father is ill and has to send them home. When she started working as a maid, she refused, saying that she would be owed money for the next 10 years and that she would not be able to have her own household. However, Sahachi worked, saved money, and gave money to Naka. Over time, her thoughts on marriage began to change, and she decided to get married. However, a fire broke out in the store where her store was stored was destroyed, and her whereabouts were unknown. 2 years later, Sahachi happened to meet a woman carrying a 2-year-old baby on her back. It turns out that Naka is carrying someone else's child on her back. But he can't help but feel pity for Naka, Miyuki Kawano, without feeling any hatred or regret. She says that before she met Sahachi, she had a man and had not decided whether to get married. The year she spent living with Sahachi was so blissful, but Naka thought that because she was so happy, she might be punished. Thinking that it might be a fire, she became a self-deprecating person. 2 years later, a son was born to a man who was not Sahachi, and when she met Sahachi at Sensoji Temple, she said, "I have come back to you." Sahachi hugged her. At the same time, Naka stabbed herself in the chest with the dagger she had brought with him and committed suicide. Sahachi dug a hole behind his workplace and buried her. Sahachi blames himself for causing his beloved Naka to commit suicide due to his own worthlessness, and is said to have been serving others to atone for his sins, including the act of holding a memorial service for his deceased Naka. Sahachi asks Noboru to inform the tenement house manager about this. Sahachi lost his last breath, calling Naka, Naka, and regretting to the very end that he had driven a woman to the point of suicide. Madwoman Oyumi attempts suicide. He tried to commit suicide by tying her sash around his neck, but she was not successful. Redbeard believes that this attempt is based on the normal human psychology, that the more Oyumi's mental state approaches normal and her daily life becomes normal, the more she hates herself. Changing the subject, Redbeard and Noboru discovered 12-year-old Otoyo, Chirumi Nikki, being severely punished by Kin, Haruko Sugimura, the village headman, at Okaba. Not only did she have a high fever, but she was also very mentally ill and dangerous, so she took her to a nursing home. Kin calls her bodyguards to stop Otoyo and tries to get her back, but Redbeard dislocates the joints of her bodyguards with her bone splicing technique, so they couldn't stand it at all. Redbeard decides to take care of Otoyo, who has entered the nursing home. As Noboru's first patient, Noboru called Otoyo to his room and nursed her, but she never opened her heart. She had been through so much since childhood that she was so mentally ill that she continued to sweep her floors until she collapsed from convulsions. She didn't trust other people's hearts so much that when Noboru tried to give her medicine, she knocked her bowl away with her hand. But what about Redbeard? She also splashed her bowl with her hand. But Redbeard was not angry. She repeated the same thing several times, but this was the first time she started drinking the medicine. During this process, Noboru was worried about what would happen if Redbeard gave Otoyo the medicine, but was surprised when Otoyo started taking medicine. And Noboru was again surprised when he saw that Otoyo looked relieved after taking medicine. I was surprised at how well the changes in Noboru's eyes and face were expressed. I knew Terumi Nikki, who played the role of Otoyo, from Hisaya Morishige's role as a child actor in a movie called Police Diary when she was young. And I thought that there are people who can be trusted because of the look in her eyes. Noboru's response to her at this time was very impressive. Otoyo's question was, "Why didn't Redbeard hit me?" However, Noboru answered as follows. "There are kind-hearted people in this world. You just haven't met anyone who says that until now," he said. I thought Noboru's answer was better than that of a psychologist. The reason is that Otoyo had never met a kind person, so she would have thought that all people were harsh and untrustworthy. But if she had met them before, she would have definitely trusted them. And if she had such an experience, she would have been kind to people as well. Noboru's speech was wonderful in that it contained hints that gave Otoyo great hope for the future, and I felt that this was a scene where the quality of her script shined. However, when Noboru tried to feed her breakfast instead of medicine, she again tried to knock her bowl away with her hand, causing it to break. After that, she ran away, but when he followed her, he saw her standing by the roadside begging. I burst into tears when I saw this scene. That's because she was moved by the naivety of thinking that it was her fault for breaking the bowl and that she had to somehow save up the money to make amends, so she started begging. At this point, Noboru must have realized that she was a fine girl with good morals. I felt that Terumi Nikki's cute, fair-skinned, childlike appearance was making her look even more smug. I couldn't help but feel sad. On the other hand, her beautiful heart that wants to fulfill her responsibilities somehow brings tears to my eyes. And Noboru, who was watching this, said, "If it looks like I'm blaming you for breaking the bowl, one apologize." She bowed her head to ask for forgiveness. When Otoyo heard this, he was so overcome with emotion that he cried and hugged Noboru. I felt that this scene was the most moving one in Redbeard. I think this scene teaches us that the most important thing to do is not to blame someone for doing something wrong, but to put yourself in the shoes of the person who did it and speak to them. By doing so, each person will understand the other person's position, and those who understand each other will be able to get along and live together with a stronger bond. Noboru, who was trying to treat people in this way, came into contact with unfortunate patients, and realized how small Noboru's own misfortune was, and I was ashamed of how conceited I was. She must have felt intensely happy that she was growing like this, day in and day out. In the meantime, Noboru himself develops a high fever, and although he was resting, he wakes up from her drowsiness and realizes that Otoyo has been taking care of him. She became interested in Noboru's medical skills and began reading medical books. Seeing such a scene, Redbeard thought that treating Noboru would be a cure for her heart. Yes, that's right. Being a patient forever means that you are always dependent on someone else. And you are passively receiving help from others without thinking about others. Therefore, helping others puts you in a position of actively acting and giving advice, which becomes a form of therapy for your own mind. The source of health is working for others. That's right. Otoyo had already gone from being the one being treated forever to being the one treating Noboru. There is no doubt that she will recover mentally. After her health returned, Noboru visited Chigusa's, her ex-fiancé's younger sister Masae, Yoko Naito, to visit her mother at her parents' home. Her mother told Noboru that her mother's husband, Amano, was careful about her and would not allow Chigusa, who gave birth to her grandson, into her house. Her mother then reassures Amano, Noboru's fiancé and Chigusa and Masai's father, that if he marries her sister Masai, everything will be fine for her. Masai was a kind girl who kept Noboru's kimono until the day before he left, but his father threw away Noboru's kimono that Masai had brought with him. When Redbeard heard this fact, he said, "Right now, she is having trouble managing the overflowing love toward Noboru, but the time will come when that love will be directed toward something else. So she just have to wait for that." Here too, Redbeard analyzes the deep psychology of humans to the level of a psychologist. This leeway is important for her mental treatment. While Otoyo was cleaning up in the kitchen, she encountered a 7-year-old boy who tried to steal some of her porridge. Apparently, Chiyobo was stealing all over the nursery school, and the women who worked at the nursing home keep an eye on him. Otoyo was watching the scene and let Chobo go. Chobo thanks Otoyo, but Otoyo sternly says that he shouldn't be a thief. However, both of Chobo's parents are so poor that they cannot afford even their daily rations. Otoyo brings leftover rice every night, so she tells Chobo not to steal it. But she overhears him saying that Otoyo has cooked a lot of rice. She made sure to have some left over. All she has to do is deny the phenomena that are appearing. However, you can see here that unless you first consider the cause of the problem, you will not be able to provide good guidance, whether the person is a child or an adult. This is a scene in which Otoyo's heart gradually returns to normal, and Otoyo's open-minded words and actions shine brightly. I'm sure Chobo will always be grateful for the words and actions of Otoyo and will never forget this for the rest of his life. Well, that kin has come to take Otoyo back again. Otoyo brilliantly rebels against the vices of adults by saying, "I like this place, I am here." When Kin tried to take her back, the women all pound with radish. And Kin had no choice but to run away. From that day on, Otoyo started wearing the kimono given to him by Masai. You can clearly see that the gratitude and warmth of her human heart is steadily penetrating into her heart. When Chobo sees her in her beautiful new kimono, he tells her that her sister is beautiful and that she looks good in it, and tells her that they are all going to a nice place and goes home. That night, Chobo's family tried to commit suicide by eating the mousetrap, and they were all taken to a nursing home. However, the nursing efforts were not worth it and all of them died except for Chobo. At that time, I heard a voice that kept calling out Chobo's name. This is because there was a saying that if you wanted to save someone who was about to go to the afterlife, you could save their life by shouting out their name into the well. And Chobo's life was saved. Noboru is getting married to Masao and is celebrating her day. With Amano's recommendation, Noboru will soon be promoted to a high-ranking job in the shogunate. So, what decision will Noboru make here? When Noboru first came to the nursing home, he hated it, drank a lot, and rebelled. What would you all do here? Noboru decides to stay at the nursing home, and tells Masai that she will have to endure poverty, but that she should think about whether that is okay. Masai and her family agree with Noboru's opinion. When Redbeard says, "You're an idiot, you'll regret it," Noboru thinks he has permission and bows his head deeply. Redbeard says the same thing again, saying, "You're a total idiot, and I'm sure you'll regret it." Noboru had grown as a person enough to say, "Let's try it." Redbeard told Noboru that he would regret it, but is that really Redbeard's true feelings? Redbeard's thoughts were, "It's okay for me to be the only one who ends my life working in a nursing home where there is no progress, and you should become the shogunate's doctor." Which was what I had in mind from the beginning. On the contrary, Noboru has already improved his range of people and medical skills compared to when he came to the nursing home. And working here for the poor and disadvantaged will continue to be a blessing to you. Did he mean to say, this is the greatest mission from heaven? Which do you think Redbeard's true feelings are? I think the correct answer to this question is to consider what the original author, Shugoro Yamamoto, wanted to say here. After looking back at this story, I found my own answer. From the beginning, Redbeard said, before Noboru say something like Dutch medicine, try coexisting with the poor and helpless people here. He said that by doing so, Noboru would be able to understand what patients need here and now. However, at the final stage, Noboru said he would regret it. In this difficult situation where you have to choose between the two, it is up to each person to decide what kind of decision they will make. It is okay for people to pursue titles and fame, but while they are being swayed by such things, they are unable to pursue real work. Shugoro and Redbeard are saying that instead of getting distracted by such trivial things, you should decide what you want to do in this society where there are so many people in need. I agree 100% with Noboru's decision. You could call it heaven or God, but this is the life we seek.